EUREKA.
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 EUREKA. Welcome in Pakhuis de Zwager in Amsterdam. My name is Servas and this is a very special program of the EUREKA project. EUREKA is a 3-year project and training program focused on real-life challenges of urban transformation, and is partly funded by the European Union Erasmus Plus project, and is a collaboration with of partners from 4 different European Union countries, namely Spain, Romania, Italy, and the Netherlands. And today we're here in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands, of course, and we're going to talk about multi-stakeholder urban development. And we have people at home, like you're watching from afar from the rest of Europe, joining us via Mentimeter. I will give later on in the program, I'll give you a link which you can use to participate in our dialogue here. But there are also people here in Pakhuis de Zwager right now, and who are going to join us in the discussion later on in the program. As I said, we're going to talk about multi-stakeholder development. What could go wrong? How should you do that in such a way that you create livable cities, brilliant cities, vibrant cities, places you would like to live and like to be? And we're going to look at several examples here in the Netherlands. Can I have a big round of applause for our first speaker, namely Tjeerd Hakau? And here it is. We have a small group of people here, and it's also a way to really show to the people watching from afar that we are having actual people here. It's not like a COVID thing going on, but it's like actual people. You are co-founder of Space and Matter, and you've prepared a presentation on the multi-stakeholder development challenges and kind of challenges and possibilities that come from there. The floor is
Sort of.
yours.
All right, thank you. Let's get the first slide out. All right, so Tjeerd, or TJ Hakau, Space and Matter is an architecture office based in Amsterdam, and I will show you today 3 sort of different ways of involving people in designing or developing or even owning the city. The first one I will elaborate a bit more on than the other 2. This is about a neighborhood in the north of Amsterdam. And if I click, I hope it will pop up, but it will. You see the central station, a little bit on top of that, there is the Klaprozenbuurt. And currently it is a industrial zone that needs to transform. So there's quite a big chunk of housing that needs to be added to this area, 250,000 square meters. And in Amsterdam, we call it in the 40-40-20 rule, which means 40% of social housing, 40% of mid-rent or affordable, and 20% of free sector. So then people can ask as much money they want for a house. And we need to keep the same amount of production space in the area. The area is surrounded by sort of 4 different neighborhoods. The Buiksloterbeek, the houseboats on the west side, the Buiksloterham on the south side, and the Marjolijnstraat on the right side. And all these people have a say in this transformation project. But there's more stakeholders involved, the landowners. As you see, this is the sort of plot map, which shows a lot of different plots and a lot of different owners, so that it can be quite challenging in a transformation project like this. Well, sorry for that. This is the plan that the municipality came up with a couple of years ago. They created a plan with big, large blocks on all the plots with quite this similar height and big sort of courtyards in the middle. And this they showed to all the stakeholders in the area and said, well, let's participate. Well, that did not happen, and people were quite upset about just dropping a plan and then having to respond to it. And there were some issues. There were dike houses along the north side, which the people at the Buiksloterbeek on the north side really disliked. The height of the blocks would come too close to them and to the houseboats, and there was no real match with the ownership of the plots and the design. I have to click again. Quite challenging.
If it doesn't work, you can just say it,
all right,
and
yeah,
our
well,
colleague will click.
I'll give it a shot. And now it goes too fast. Please, yeah, I'll fix it. I'll have it in my. I'll try the clicker. So it sort of upsetted a lot of people, and they started to take charge themselves. So they hired this young intern urbanist and made plan themselves, which they called the Green Dragon because of the shape of the green that they wanted to promote and push. Next slide, please. They created a proper document for the initiative called the Green Dragon. Next slide, please. And they even managed to go to the politicians of Amsterdam. So on the right side, the mayor, on the left side, alderman, and they were also like on the picture. So they got a lot of lobby going. Next slide. And this is the plan that they made. It is a plan that and I have to say, I live, next slide, in that area on the south side, we're not very happy with, because what the people did is just push all the high density to the big road there, and so it would sort of, thank you, be very close to the self-built homes at that spot. But they were pretty powerful in their lobby, so the municipality said we have to redo the whole thing. And when we heard that, we thought, me and a neighbor of mine, let's just create an alternative plan from the people in the Buiksloterham, and we make it sort of more varied height, and we hope that to trigger people that they would also like this as an alternative. And everyone did, and that was the point that the municipality said, well, okay, guys, if you think you can do better, then please try. And so there were 3 offices involved: Beta, B+B, it's a landscape architecture office, and Space and Matter. And together we created a sort of process for involving all the stakeholders in the area. So we would have sessions with the neighbors on 3 different themes, to talk about the urban framework, to talk about the public space, and to integrate both. And then we would also have sessions with landowners, just to talk about their own plots. And after each green and red session, we would have a collective session with everyone to sort of get everyone aligned. And eventually we would create a collective sketch plan so that everyone would be involved with and happy with. But we had to obviously educate a little bit all the people that joined the process. So we created a workshop series on how urban frameworks work, what density is, what sort of rules there are in the urban plan. And we played with them with little models, and we together with the neighbors we create different options, and then all tracked it and documented it well, so it would be clear afterwards that why we would have done or made certain decisions. And then for the landowner session, you see there's a disbalance between all the shared ownership and the initial urban plan of the municipality. We came up with a plan to have a sort of strategy. So we said, okay, there's a lot of land. People would be very upset if the neighbor could build more than themselves. So we said, okay, everyone can build the same amount. And we noticed that in the floor space index of 3, we would match that 250,000 square meters. So everyone would be able to build 3 floors. Then we said, okay, but we need roads and other things. So we cut up the blocks, we push them aside so they fit better with the new plan. And we also have a big social issue. We need to build a lot of social homes, and not a single landowner wanted to develop those. So we said we push those things, the blocks aside, and all the social housing can be built on municipal land. And then we shift everything, because you cannot build 3 stories to the end. So if you would then build half of your plot, you could build 6 stories. Or if you would build 1/3 of your plot, you could build 9. And that would become a very varied neighborhood in height. And that we would just replicate to all the plots. That was the strategy. Well, we had workshops about the public space. And then the collective feedback with a lot of people in a room like this that could then give their final feedback. And this is the plan we then made with a very clear solution for the blocks, a very varied neighborhood in heights, which all the neighbors actually also liked and told in the workshops that they wanted that. and we made renders. And that sort of triggered. Then finally everyone understood, this is what you guys mean. And that really helped. So we made a large exhibition on for everyone, with a lot of people visiting and a lot of people listening to the presentation. Key person in this whole process was Aniek, and Aniek worked for the municipality, and she was very, very eager to make this a real participatory process. So when I say that is the type of people we need to get it done. So the area is now transforming from this to this. There was an urban plan made by the municipality, which is now being developed by all the different stakeholders in the area. Then very briefly, we can also go a step further. So this is a project very close to that, Klapperozenbuurt. This is in the Buiksloterham. We met Marianne de Blok a long time ago, and she had a dream of building a floating neighborhood. And she had a lot of friends that also were sort of excited with the idea, and we helped them to create, to further develop that idea, and also workshop sessions. And then we went to the municipality with a plan, super high ambition, regarding sustainability, with a smart grid, with solar panels, with a lot of new innovative stuff. And the municipality said, okay, well, we have this plot, we can start a competition for it. So we were one of the two parties that entered the competition. Fortunately, we won. And I always like to show this anyways. This is what then happened, I think 8 years later, when in 3 of these days we put all the boats in place and we had a neighborhood in 3 days. All citizen designed and developed. So that is, I think, a very big achievement of just regular Amsterdammers. A community-centered neighborhood that is very well working in the social cohesion. And the cool thing is that all the other projects in the Buiksloterham are also connecting to the sustainability measures that Schoon Schip made. Then the last project, very quick. This is a plan or like a project we're working on in the southeast of Amsterdam called the Bijlmer. And there's a local neighborhood association that is scaling up to become a community land trust. This is the area. They have their neighborhood room or a venue right there at the arrow, but a lot of land will be given out by the municipality, and we try to get that land into the hands of the people. So usually land goes to market parties who can make a profit, and what we're trying to do here is to get the land and give it to the citizens in a community land trust, which is a non-profit entity. And citizens own the land, or they lease the land, and on top of the land they build homes, affordable homes for their own community. And they just do not just make homes, but also other amenities like playgrounds and like neighborhood things that you would like to have in a neighborhood. And the big idea of this community land trust is that it's not just the neighbors deciding, or the people that live inside the homes decide on what happens to the land, but it's also the people surrounding those projects and the municipality. So they all have a 33% vote in what is happening to that area. And recently we started the first, kickstarted the first housing cooperative within the community land trust. I think it's a bit high over, considering the time. I think that is the end.
Amazing. Big round of applause. The fun thing is, when I listen to you, it must be difficult for non-Dutch speakers to memorize or reproduce the names of Buiksloterham and these kind of places. But it's thank you for sharing this with us. And if we go to the specific with the boats, it's a very interesting way of creating a new kind of environment of or neighborhoods. Why is this so important? How is it? It's obvious because it creates a playful neighborhood, but
well, what I think is the best thing about this neighborhood is that it's also a sort of non-profit thing, right?
Yeah.
So these people had a high ambition for considering sustainability. Like a top-down development would have never gotten to that level, because the people, they invest in their sustainable measures, and they get the return on investment because they save on energy bills,
Yeah.
right? So they can invest a little bit more. They don't have to pay a developer. You know, the profit margins. There are no profit margins, so all the money gets into the project.
Yeah. And today we talk about all the aspects of multi-stakeholder development. So the lessons from that is when you use this in a different ways of different people connecting with that, there are more possibilities
Definitely.
and more solutions.
And what will sort of bugger your mind is that if you have people in charge, they will be way more creative than any market party can be. They come up with new ideas, but they also, at least these people, manage to actually do it and fix it.
Yeah. Thank you. Big round of applause for Tjeerd Hakau. And we have a bit of a switch because Ellen van Buren from the Technical University of Delft, she's a professor of urban development management at the Technical University of Delft, is here and she's going to talk. But before we give a big round of applause for Ellen, I have to tell you the code for the Mentimeter. If you use your telephone and go to menti.com and use the code, and it's on the screen any moment now, but you use the code 83014682. Repeat, 83014682. You can participate via a distance or from a distance with this program via menti.com. Later on in the program, we'll have plenty of opportunity to collect with that. People here in the audience, my colleague Robert will walk around with the microphone and you can just raise your hand. So we'll bring you into the conversation. But first we go to Ellen van Buren and can have a big round of applause for Ellen. Dankjewel. Helemaal. And you have your own presentation prepared. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me here. I think Tjeerd already introduced some of the challenges, but also the immense opportunities that urban development offers us, but also offers to stakeholders, and not just the usual suspects, but also the citizens and other citizen movements on the ground. So that is really interesting. And what you see here on this slide is one picture of a district in The Hague, also a transformation district, urban transformation of an industrial area to a more mixed use area with living and industry. And it says here Binklab. It's the sort of community building that took place in this area. And it was a big advertisement. What do you want to have on this spot? Come in and join. And this was a sort of invitation to the local people living there, using the area, trespassing the area, having perhaps willing to live in the area in the future. And they were invited to come in and join the planning process and put in their thoughts on the process. And I will share with you, because I think there is a lot of knowledge already out there, and also amongst the audience in this room, and also on online watching, on stakeholder management, participatory processes. I think we've all been acquainted with Sherry Arnstein's letter of participation since the 1960s already, which is still sort of dominating the debate. And I want to share with you some thoughts I had more recently, also based on, well, what I read in the literature, but also what I notice in real-life projects that I'm sort of acquainted with. Let me start first by showing this picture. It is of the first Dutch polder, which was created in 1608 near Amsterdam, the Beemster. Sometimes the decision-making in the Netherlands, it's really characterized by a consensual approach with public and private stakeholders joining forces to make things happen. And this first polder was actually a public-private initiative because Amsterdam needed more space for living, for working, for industry. And there was a lot of water surrounding Amsterdam. So what they did was to create a polder to pump out the water. But there was no technology yet to do so. There was technological innovation needed. There was a plan. There was an innovation that was supposed to work. And after a couple of times, it did work. And what they did was raise funding from different stakeholders to make it happen. So everybody really had a stake in it who participated. And when it eventually happened, they made a lot of money because then the land could be built on and sold. And so this was in essence the sort of capitalist win-win model of poldering, as they say in the Netherlands. And one of the advantages was that there are co-benefits for everyone involved, and it's minimizing risks for the individuals involved, and also the profit will be shared. And this is still underlying lots of the thoughts of participatory planning, participatory policy making for urban development. What you see nowadays is that, still participation is considered as a conflict resolution mechanism. It is considered as an input for planning and design. As long as you involve citizens, you can make use of their ideas, you can make use of the local knowledge, you can create or raise support for the decisions that are made, and that also legitimizes decisions. And here you see a bench along the Thames, an expensive development, but this bench, it says the sign, is provided by local residents. Please be quiet after dark and take your litter with you. So this is a sort of mechanisms also to organize the use of this sort of the public use of this private space. And it also is a token of, how people deal with the fight over space and the tensions that arise for it. By the way, I was at this particular spot this summer again, and the bench was gone. Because apparently it didn't work, unfortunately. And now people were sitting and at the cable, so the people were still there. But community building, that is considered key to many of these participatory processes. And the idea is, if you get to know each other, you need to build trust, you need to build commitment, and usually it is a combination of public stakeholders, the city, the municipality in many of its different roles that it has in planning processes, knowledge institutes, so they're private actors, developers, for example, investors, and users, and in living labs, that is a fashionable term since a decade. It allows us to experiment with new forms of participation and new forms of city making. And I think also the Schoon Schip initiative that we just saw presented with the houseboats, that is also an example of such a living lab and such a new form of city making. And you see the wonderful examples that can happen. But then, if you think of it, there are also some community myths. And I want to share with you some thoughts about these myths that will sort of disentangle this sense of community building as a cure for all. So often it is considered that communities, they sort of represent the public interest, whereas communities also have a private interest. We already saw Tjeerd, the architect, with the wonderful plan, but you were also a resident having your own private stake there in the plan. So there you see already the different roles and different interests people may have, and representing both public and private interests at the same time. Can you consider it as a private organization or as a public organization? What kind of interests are being promoted? You also need to think of that, what is a community? Can a community be defined? People are usually part of multiple communities. What does a community stand for? Some communities are more loose than others. Communities is also, it sounds really nice, but what is a community? That also requires some more thinking. And then you come to the question, communities, can you build them, or do they just emerge? And this is one beautiful example, a beautiful building that has been built here in the city of Amsterdam as well, by a lot of letters. A colleague of mine is also involved in there. Winnie Maas is the architect. And there it is a building, apartment building with lots of community space. And the assumption is that also a community is being created by using the shared spaces. So can it be built or should it emerge? And then perhaps a final thought to share with you is the polder model. It started by creating a win-win situation. And what we see here, also due to climate change, the resource challenges were up to the lack of space that we have and the growing population that we have to cater for. We sort of come to the point that perhaps it is not just about sharing wins, which of course can mobilize people, but it might also be a sharing of the loss or perhaps a minimization of the loss. And then the question is, well, do the same kind of dynamics, do they work the same when it is about minimizing risk, when it is about making use of the profits that are being created? So that is also, well, some food for thought for the discussion coming up.
Thank you so much. Can I have a big round of applause for Ellen? Ellen van Buren from the University of Delft. And for the other speakers, please come forward. And Ellen, for you, I love the phrase, of course, we're talking about, take a seat. We're going to talk about the multi-stakeholder urban development. But I like the idea of the poldering incident. And poldering is, it's a colloquium in Dutch, which means you have to talk with each other so many times about so many topics that you can really get through every aspect of a difficult situation. So when you get to a solution in the end, everybody is agreed with the outcome, which is very difficult. It takes a long time, but it's also very much needed for a good dialogue within society and also a good way of connecting people to challenges in society. So I like the connection with that. But the thing with the Winnie Maas building here in Amsterdam, it also looks very organic in a way to connect things with that. So thank you for pointing that out. And we all forget. I have no idea. You said, what was the company?
MVRDV.
MVRDV.
Thank you.
Maas.
Yeah.
Nice.
I need a lot of papers to remember things because I would forget the name of my mother when I don't have it in front of me right now. Robert is here walking around with a microphone. For the people in the venue here right now who would like to ask questions, just raise your hand. Give me some time in the beginning, but after a while, raise your hand. For the people who are watching from other places in Europe, you can join us via Mentimeter. If you go to menti.com and then type in the code 83014682. So 83014682, and we'll put that on screen plenty of times during this discussion. You can join us with your questions. These questions via the Mentimeter will be sent to my iPad. There's a slight delay in that, so please give me time or give my colleagues time to send it to me, so we bring it into the discussion here right now. Of course, Tjeerd joined us on the table. Tjeerd Hakau, you already been introduced, but next to you is Gert-Joost Peek. Sorry, I'll mispronounce your name. You're a lecturer at Area Development and Transition Management at the Rotterdam University of Applied Sciences. I'll go it again. Lecturer Area Development and Transition Management at the Rotterdam University of Applied Sciences and author of Spot On. And you are connected with, and it's been said a while back, with the Binkhost project. I am Bink and the Bink Lab. That is correct. And your name, I'll say it correctly now, is Gert-Joost Peek. Thank you, and a big round of applause for Gert-Joost. And opposite from you is Jonel Nuchteren, and your project manager is Amstel 3, and which is a project here in Amsterdam Zuidoost and in Ouder Amstel, which is
it's easier, huh? A project manager. Yeah,
yeah, it is.
A lecturer.
Yeah, a lot of things to remember. As I said, I have to have it written down. And Amstel 3 is an area which is, it's for the people who know Amsterdam, it's on the western side of the highway to Utrecht. and it's a large area all the way from the Amstel station
It's
to
a large former office area.
Yeah.
Near the Amsterdam Arena.
yeah, it's
and the
being
IKEA,
redevelopment all the way from the Amstel station to the hospital, ABC hospital. It's quite a big project. For you, I already talked a bit about it, but Bink and Binkhorst. Could you tell a bit about that, Gert-Joost? What is that? What we're talking about? It's an area in Den Haag.
It is an area in The Hague. It used to be an inner city industrial area, and it is now slowly been transformed into something which you might call a multifunctional area with at least at this moment the development of 5,000 dwellings, adding to the industrial and productive uses that are already there.
So it's a multi-use area with all different kinds of perspective. So it looks kind of like the areas in Amsterdam North where you're working with.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know each other. You know each other's projects.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with Buiksloterham.
And I'm very familiar with the Binkhorst.
So, but how do you transfer a place like this to? Because it's quite difficult. Like an industrial area, it's industrial for a reason. Sometimes industrial areas are dirty, and the misconception is that modern industrial areas would be cleaner, and especially when they come circular economy, but they're not. So it's quite difficult. So how do you do that? What comes with that?
Maybe I brought some slides, and we can, if I may have to.
No, my colleagues will do that. My colleagues will do that.
This is the area.
Yeah.
So if you have a look at it, at the end there's the North Sea, the city of The Hague, let's say, and then at the front is the area which you might see the letters Binkhaven, which is in the middle of it. A lot of office space, a lot of industrial space, an inner city port. And even a graveyard in the middle.
Oh, wow.
So, and when
My colleagues will do the picture.
yeah, this is Sabrina Lindemann, and it was in the midst of let's say the last financial and economic crisis that she came to this area. When the large plans of institutions and municipalities together redeveloping this area came to a halt, and she thought, if they're going to do something organic, what would be the role of citizens within that? And Sabrina moved to this area and started talking to people and collaborating with it. And about 10 years later, this is a picture from 2 years ago. We have a network, and we try to show what a network looks like. It's something like this. All kind of different people working together on the new future of this Binkhorst area. And I think one of the main things which we did is that we, in about the process of a year and a half, came up with these 5 core values. Because within the plans of the municipality, there was a lot of things said, but there was nothing on this level like being, where do we actually go for?
So authentic crafted word living area.
Yep.
With raw, exciting frayed edges.
Yeah, that's this dirty you're talking about. We want to keep
So
a
it
bit
can
of
be
it.
there. Yeah, but it's the thing I want to talk about later. But with great diversity leading to new encounters and innovation,
Yep.
a dynamic experimental space that's always on the move, and the surprising waterfront of The Hague, which you're not talking about the
The seaside? No.
No, we're talking about
We're talking about the surprising waterfront.
and it's aimed at recreation, water-related craftsmanship, and creation of new connections.
Yep.
So all this makes sense. So all reasons why you want to make this area interesting, but still it is difficult. Some kinds of industrial processes can't go on in these kinds of areas. You can't have an oil refinery next to an office building or how did you transform such an area, and how did you decide what projects can go on there, or what kind of development can go on and what can't go on?
Well, let's for instance talk about this waterfront. There are a few of these functions which you cannot have in combination with dwellings, which are very much connected to the waterfront. Having large boats there with all kind of, for instance, waste from the city going by ship to Rotterdam, or we also have concrete mixing being done, and you need a lot of boats for that, with having the stones and things. But when we asked the people that were buying a new house there, why do you choose for this area? They said, we choose for this area because we have all these things going on the water. We have all these ships moving in and out.
So it's an interesting area to live.
Yeah. But
And then people accept like different noise levels or pollution levels they take for granted? Or
no, they hardly realize that. But what they actually do not realize is that because it will be a living area, those boats will be gone within 2 years.
So there
And
is
that's the big question. So why we say surprising waterfront, we do not say keep those large ships there, but maybe do something for inner city distribution by water, by electric boats, for instance. So keep this surprising water activity, but in a new and innovative way.
Tjeerd, your project, the first project you showed in Amsterdam North, has the same kind of area, also in the same kind of transformational area. Do you recognize the same kind of development going on, or the same kind of challenges?
But maybe what I would like to say about it is that in those transformation areas, the parties that are currently in those areas, they will not be able to afford that amount of space in the transformed area, which is a pity, because that drives all the sort of productive and maker.
So the so-called gentrification, but then also for industrial areas.
So that is a thing we really need to think about, how we're going to solve that.
Yeah, how do you at the same time possible to make sure that it is healthy to live there? It's an interesting area to live. Things can go on, and at the same time, it's affordable for all involved. And I'm going to the other side of the table. And Jonel, you, as I said, you're from the City of Amsterdam, project manager of Amstel 3, which is a large project from in Amsterdam Zuidoost for redevelopment of a business area. So no industrial zoning, but there is a difference with businesses, offices.
It is partly offices,
a
large part offices, and also a large part businesses.
Yeah, we have a few pictures.
Yeah, we have some slides coming by, but to hand in on Tjeerd, one of the things that we're looking at now is how can we keep those businesses in the area and even make them bigger in the amount, and also have a transformation of the area into a more diversified city.
So in a difference from the kind of districts we were talking to, well, for example, the Binkhorst, you move to an area which is an office area but very low density. Well, there are high-rise buildings but lots of green in between. And now you redevelop that in kind of area you see right here. Is this one of the...
Yeah, these are the buildings that are being built at the moment, and this is in the office area, which are indeed at low density, a bit outdated offices from the 80s, early 90s, but did run down during the 2010, 2015 period, and we made a plan to transform the whole area into a more diversified city with a lot of new houses added towards it, and also all kind of facilities. But also remain and keep the offices, the amount of offices for the area.
And even increasing it, as you just said.
Yeah, more densify and increasing it. Yeah.
So, and you're gonna add lots of people. How many people are they gonna approximately?
Well, at Amstel 3, we're looking at 10,000, maybe 15,000 houses, approximately 25,000 inhabitants, 700,000 square meters of office, which is also similar the amount there is now. And one of the things that we need to add is good facilities and services like schools and like other leisure and other services that create a complete city and a good livelihood.
So as as you just said, in an area with lots of offices and these kind of development. Of course, you don't have the obstacles and the challenges you have in a formal industrial area, but there are kind of challenges. What kind of challenges do we have to think about? Is it difficult to convince the current renters of the neighborhood to make space for the new people moving in?
Yeah, it is. It is because here we need to work together. The municipality is facilitating and is depending also on the activities of the owners. So for both sides, there need to be a good gain and win when redeveloping the offices in the area. And our biggest challenge is to obtain a city that is nice and livable. So we mostly look at the public space and try to create a nice environment surrounding those new buildings in the area.
Yeah, just as you said, there's the group of current inhabitants of this area that's more on the eastern side of the highway and especially the eastern side of the railway, not the highway. And you also have the people who visit the football stadium, but also the pop party over there. That is the second crowd of people. And then there's the third crowd of people, the office workers right now. And you add to that more office workers and more inhabitants. How do you combine? That is a lot of things to combine, a lot of challenges to overcome, but also a lot of ideas and vested positions to overcome.
Yeah, but we have got one big luck for the southeast. There is a lot of public space, a lot of public services, the metro over there, and the train station, and also the infrastructure for cars and the roads, etc., is really over-dimensionized. So we don't need large investments in those kind of assets, and are able to optimize, for instance, the public transport at the moment. So by adding new dwellings and new services in the area, those basic conditions are already there. And therefore, we really focus upon connecting this new part of the city with the existing part of the city, and also on creating a good public space in the area.
Yeah, to show at the people watching and who can't read, because the lettering is quite small. The green part is Amstel 3. That's the area you're working on. So that's the lower part.
Yeah. So this map
top part is
this map shows the southeast of tomorrow and gives an overview of all the projects we're working on, with a large group of project managers and all the other people from the municipality. Together with the people from Southeast, and we're planning about approximately 39,000 new houses in this area, going up to 2040. So there's an enormous amount of new development going around.
And about the 10,000 is just in the lower left side
10
green
to 15,000 in the green area, Amstel 3.
That will be about 30,000 inhabitants. There's a lot of people who will join the people already living there right now. How do you empower then the current inhabitants of Amsterdam Zuidoost, of these people who are living already there? Because a lot of people adding to their area, to the neighborhood, things will change. Their own experience of their own neighborhood will change. How do you connect with that?
Yeah, that's one of the big challenges as well. So Southeast is also an area with multiple problems, also on the social and economic side. There's multiple programs as well from the municipality trying to address those kind of issues. And one thing that we said is that we're building here for the people in Southeast. So one of the appointments we could make with the new developers is to be sure that when the houses are ready, that at least 25% of them is allocated to inhabitants of Southeast. And that works really well and gives makes sure that there is a good benefit for the inhabitants of Southeast.
Good. For the people watching from here and also people here in Pakhuis, if you want to ask a question, just raise your hand when you're in here. And if you want to join us via Mentimeter, you can go to menti.com and dial in 8301-4682, and then your question will be sent here. To look at you, you didn't have current inhabitants, and you kind of had, but there are a lot of people living around both neighborhoods. Do you have similar experiences with connecting with people already living in the area surrounding your own neighborhood you're working on? And actually for both you two, but I'll start with you, Tjeerd. So the similar experience as in Zuidoost with Noord.
Well, I think Zuidoost, like in Amstel 3, you did not really have inhabitants, right? It's
No,
just
in the
people
office
around.
area.
But surrounding area you did.
Oh, well,
the
that is the
surrounding
same
area.
thing in Noord. There's
Yeah.
a lot, and the thing is, there a lot has changed in the past years in Noord, right? There's a lot of people that from the south of Amsterdam or elsewhere in the Netherlands that have moved to Noord, and it's a different type of people. Like they have more to spend, and that is also driving out people that used to live in Noord. So there are certain people sort of uniting and creating a counter movement. They're called now we have I think 2 of them: Red Amsterdam Noord and Verdedig Noord.
Yeah.
Just
So
some
red
terms.
means safe in
Safe,
Dutch.
yeah,
It's not
exactly.
rood, but safe, Amsterdam Noord,
Yeah.
and defend Amsterdam Noord.
Yeah, and they are sort of trying to counter all the gentrification that is
But
happening.
It is, these names are spot on because they've apparently, if I understand you correctly, they see it as a threat for their own neighborhood that these areas being redeveloped.
Well, it is literally a threat for for them because the housing corporations, they sell houses that they used to rent out to these people for market rates, and the shops change. Now you have to buy cappuccinos for €5. That's something those people cannot afford. So and another big thing is what they call is the eco gentrification. So we can think about solar panels and all those things, but a lot of people in Noord, they don't even have money to get their kids a breakfast, right? So now we're saying, we need to be circular, we need to be super sustainable, but we are not able to include those people in those ambitions.
Gert-Joost, do you have the same experiences with Bonkhorst?
We also have neighborhoods nearby which are let's say more or less deprived. So that's the same. But what I find here is something going on which is a lot of times when you talk about communities, it's always about citizens. But the basis of our community in the Binkhorst is actually business. It's the businesses that were there for like maybe even 80 years or 90 years with the people working there. And that's the core of the community that we work with.
But it sounds like there's a parallel because also with the businesses, they have to change the way
definitely.
they work.
Yep.
And I could imagine that they'd like that. That is one thing. So how can, especially municipalities, but also people watching, students or people here or people who study architecture or different kinds of this direction, going to work in this kind of fields, how can they overcome this? So what is the role of professionals in making sure that a redevelopment, like gentrification, means that the whole area gets more expensive? Yes, it's nicer, but people who live there can't live there for the long run. That sounds like unfair. That sounds like something we don't want. So how can we overcome them?
Well, that's the big experiment that we are doing in Amsterdam. We decided not to build in the green fields, but to redevelop the brown fields. And one of the things is how do we make it work, for instance, financially? That's a big question in the market. And the other one is how do we make it work for all the citizens and make sure that it strengthens the city instead of creating gentrification, for instance. And that's step by step is trying and involving at least all the people that are connected with the plots that you are transforming.
Yeah. And I think what you were telling us before is that you allocate 25% of the newly built homes to local residents, and I think that is also one of the keys.
Yeah, that's the thing. You also draw in that cheaper buildings is integrated fundamentally in the plans.
Yeah, and for those people, right?
Yeah.
And it's not only cheaper buildings, but appropriate buildings.
Well, not cheaper buildings, affordable apartments. That is, cheaper buildings would be rather way around.
Yeah.
Ellen, so what kind of tools from your perspective are there when you have to manage these kind of things? So what kind of management tools do you have to really get there?
Yeah, there are several management tools. Only the question is how do they interact together and how can they withstand the force of the market? So it's still a market system in which we operate.
Yeah.
So
from my perspective, I'm not I'm not I'm not a professor. I don't work at the university. I'm not an architect. But for my profession, I just want it fixed. So how can we fix it? Maybe that makes the question easier.
Okay. Well, it's a problem of many hands. So we don't have one authority in place, but there are multiple authorities. There are multiple landowners. There are also people who bought their houses in the past, who bought the land or leased the land in the past. So that is the problem of many hands in essence. And we've got this concept of, well, it's called organized irresponsibility, a term coined by Ulrich Beck, a sociologist from Germany, some time ago, showing that even though all these stakeholders having some kind of authority and resources to solve the problem, they all try to do their best to solve it. But because there is no central director directing the overall process, still the overall result is an unwanted outcome. And that is, I think, what is happening, for example, with these gentrification processes, because we do see the housing need, we do see the need for affordable housing, but at the same time there are these counter effects like pushing out industry, pushing out existing residents, sometimes not even just because they cannot afford it anymore, but also because they do not feel at home any longer in such a neighborhood that is so rapidly changing.
Yeah. So a neighborhood, even though when your house might be, well, at a good rent level, which you can afford in a kind of proper house, but if you go outside and the cappuccino is €6, then there is no place for you to be. Then it's like stepping into a different world. That's also the point you wanted to make.
Yeah.
But how do we overcome this? Because this is unfair and this is not something we want as society.
Yeah, well, there are certain regulatory instruments that you can use. The land price is usually set by, if it's public land, that is an instrument you can use. But then you've got the two-edged sword, because it also means the public revenue for the city. So if you lower the land price, then you also have less revenues for a city. It has
to come from somewhere.
It has to come from somewhere. And but there are instruments, and not all instruments are used to the maximum. So there are also lots of city governments, perhaps I'm speaking for the Netherlands, but also in many other countries, who are not capable or of sort of regulating this land market and regulating the housing market. So putting strong market controls in place, that is one way of organizing it. There are also more bottom-up instruments, like the community land trust that was already mentioned, and that is also an instrument that can be very effective. Yeah. But again, it should be used in a sort of controlled, protected environment, so that market forces cannot enter. And I'm very curious, for example, with the floating houses, the example that you gave. So what will happen if people will move? Perhaps you can have an example of what happens then. How to control the price.
That is the thing. At Schoon Schip, that is not controlled. So it's free market. They can sell for whatever they want, or for whatever other people want to pay for it. But that you can sort of control if you organize it in a different way, right? So if you would tell those people, you can live here for a certain amount, but you cannot sell it for market price, but you make a little profit.
To the city government.
Yeah, that is something that you can have as a rule for the land that you lease out, right?
But then it is really difficult, because these are things that is also very political. It is a very political decision how to go with that. But in a broader sense, we want fair cities that are affordable to live for all of us. And here in Amsterdam, I'm pretty sure in northern Italy as well, or in Bucharest, rents are going up. Cost of living is going up, so it's more and more problematic. So is it fair then to say that talking about multi-stakeholder urban development is very much a social question and also a socio-economic question?
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
It is about ownership. It is how to finance stuff. It is about governance.
Yeah.
Those are the things that decide way more how a neighborhood can develop than the architecture.
And it's in essence about solidarity. Huh?
Yeah.
To what extent are we willing to share the place that we have and the resources that we have to live? And I think that solidarity is becoming more and more pressured in Europe, but in all places in the world.
Well, actually, I also live in the Buikstad-Ham, right? So we have all these self-built houses, and a couple of we built them 7 years ago. So the prices went up crazy in the past years, and some of my neighbors came up with the idea: well, why don't we put the additional value that it now has? Why can we take some out of that and create a fund for making affordable homes, right?
Yeah.
And I think we need to have these sort of initiatives that create a bit of balance.
There is. I would love to go deeper into that, but we have still another things to tackle. But this is, I think, a good topic to tackle at a later moment and a later date. But it touches the same kind of topic as conflicting interests. So we have interests of people living, for example, here in Amsterdam or in The Hague. We already have vested interest, and then you have to move in new people, so they have new interest. So how can you overcome these conflicting interests? How can you make sure that convince people who live, for example, in Amsterdam Zuidoost, that because it's not per se in their interest that 30,000 or even 60,000 people come join them? How can you get them along, that they still have the idea that they are part of their neighborhood, their world is not being shattered, it's just being enriched? Is that even possible?
Well, I think not in all cases. I mean, in the end, we're a democratic system, and if we decided to add more houses in Southeast, and the majority of people probably doesn't want that, the ones that live over there, but the one who's looking for a home is really desperate to find a new place to live, and we want them to have them in this city.
Yeah.
So
you have to convince the people living there that it is in the general interest.
It's not so much about convincing, but
Yeah.
it is, some things are just being said by our democratic system, and then we go into the discussion. Okay, how can we do this in a way that we all try to benefit from it? And that's the search that we always start when we start a new project. Sometimes we get very interesting results. For instance, in the K-buurt, which is an area in the Bijlmer in the southeast. The municipality thought, we present here 2 new plans. Do you want A or do you want B? This is the participation that you're involved in. And then we got a participation strike from the inhabitants over there. And I think that's a really good moment in our learning curve, where we find out, okay, this is not a way to do a participation and to try to redevelop a new area together.
It's like
so
the people said,
from there on, we gave them the budget to develop a new plan, a bit what Tjeerd did in Klaprozenbuurt. And in the end, you come up with a plan that at least is good accepted and fits into the little needs or the bigger needs that are over there with the inhabitants.
And it sounds like, and then I come to you, but it sounds like the inhabitants said, or the people living there said, well, you ask us to do all these things to make sure that we tick all these boxes, like citizens had participated, their voices were heard, and now there is a plan that might or might not have a connection with what the people said that what's going to happen there. And so you actually gave them a connection and a possibility to redraw the plans, so they have a real say within the confines of the broader scope of the city. So the city said the amount of people living there should rise. There should be more living spaces. But the current inhabitants, the trade-off was they could redesign and co-design.
They could redesign it and put their own restraints in it, and so we got a plan that fitted better.
So it works to stop participating if you don't feel that the way you're participating is being valued in the correct way, but it's also valuing the people and taking their time seriously.
Yeah.
Ellen.
Well, the question is, who are the people participating in these
different
strikes
question.
and in the alternative plan developed? And I think that is something very tricky. On the one hand, it's very beautiful, of course, but there might also be very exclusionary processes taking place,
Such as?
which is beyond the scope of the democratic legitimation. Well, such as, for example, professionals at the table, like an architect living in the neighborhood taking the lead, or some energy experts taking the lead. And there are lots of professionals living in those areas, working also on these types of issues professionally. And I'm not saying that they are not willing to represent the interests of the people, but then you've got, there are so many people living there, so what are their
So a
interests?
couple
We know.
or a single parent with 4 children who's working a job and then has to, well, all these other things has to be done. For them, it's a much bigger investment to participate in redesign of their and co-design of the neighborhood than it is for someone who has just retired. and
Yeah, but
has
you can organize that, right? You don't have to be at the table to participate.
But how do you do that?
We had a sort of representatives from one neighborhood who would then communicate all the things said at a participation event to the people, of to their neighbors, and it's a WhatsApp group, and then they check in a WhatsApp group who wants to join, and there have been so many events for this, but you can sort of.
But
Hear the method for it.
I think in essence there needs to be, because there is a sort of promise that every voice will be heard and will be recognized. And I think that is something that leads to misunderstandings or disappointments as well. And I think in these plans, you cannot recognize or cherish every voice or every interest. So there will be trade-offs. And I think it's especially about providing clarity of what the trade-offs are. And how to deal with that then in the...
But here again, and I mean, we're talking about communities. First, it's about citizens, which are maybe not even the main community. Now it's again about participation. Is that about community?
I don't know.
No. I think we should talk about communities, which are exclusive, because they are inclusive.
They're by nature inclusive
yeah.
by definition, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, often when as I'm being, we are as organization are approached to, let's say, participate. Actually, I'm not there to participate. We work on these core values, and we try to make it happen. And that's what a community does. A community works, a community acts, and a community might say no. But it's not there to participate. It's there.
Yeah, but
It's the municipality that should participate. It's the other way around.
I'll go in deeper into that. For the people here, if you want to participate, raise your hand. For the people at home, if you want to participate, and apparently things are going through to the iPad, so my colleagues are fixing it right now. So if you wrote in the question and wanted to participate in that, and asking why it was quiet, because it didn't reach my iPad. But by definition, a community is a group of people, but a group of people doesn't, like, for example, Hart voor de K-buurt, which is a group of people living in the K-buurt, the K neighborhood, so the area in Zuidoost where all the streets start with a K. And this community is not necessarily reflective of all the people living in the neighborhood. It's a community that exists in the neighborhood, and then we have to make sure that the community you engage with is also representative of all the people and all the organizations and companies and all other actors who are there in that area and also are connected with that area.
Who says that?
Well, I heard it you said that. Well, if it's not, then it is an interesting thing. If it's not needed, how do you, then you can just do it. But we are a democracy, so we want to connect with people. Meant to be there. But yeah, so why would you not, it is a good thing, for my opinion, but apparently I'm wrong, but it's a good thing to connect with people or with different organizations when you redevelop an area.
We let's say you should be open. But and inviting.
Yeah.
But if people do not come,
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Then we
So
understand.
there is not such a like, for instance, when you have a municipal process, you might want to have a fair represented voice. That's not what we aim for.
Understand.
And that is
side
where
now.
the municipality comes in, to make sure that the different interests are being protected and
Yeah.
served.
So we live in a democracy.
Represented.
People vote for the city council or vote for the national parliament. People also vote here. Again, as I said, if you go to menti.com and then type in 83014682, 83014682, you can ask questions. Finally, I have one, and I'm going to ask that, and I'm going to read it right now, so I hope I'll do it correctly. I actually have three. First question, what works the best in the citizen-driven urban development and what doesn't work to make it happen? So it's kind of in connection what we do. Is there, like, first question, if you look at your face said, well, why did you, like, why did you make that face when I talked about citizen-driven urban development? Did you make that face in connection with that term?
Well, I think there are more communities than only citizen communities.
Okay.
So that's one thing. And I'm not sure if for instance, for the last few years there was a lot of, let's say, real estate business going on in the Binkhorst, and we did not really participate in that because that's way out. That's big money. But we tried to do the things that were not on the agenda yet. For instance,
so your point
green
is
space, safe walking area.
But your point of view is citizen engaged urban development is not always necessary. But then we go to the question: if we choose for citizen driven urban development, what would work? So the question is, what works best in the citizen driven urban development, and what doesn't work to make it happen? So what works and what doesn't work, if we want to have citizen-driven urban development. But from this premise, we do. So, can you have
So
an answer?
I think every case needs its own community researched approach, or whatever term we want to use here. For Amstel 3 at the moment, it is really important that we make it a nice area. And for that, we're going to create a central park, which is now a big road. We're going to transform into a big, nice central park. At least that's what we hope. And the input for that park is not something the municipality is going to give. We want to create a park for the people that are going to live over there.
So it
So-
works to give people actual influence on
Exactly.
the co-design of the public space.
Of course, we give them constraints, like for instance our budget, but how the park is going to look like and what kind of program we want into the park, that's really something that is open for discussion. And
So what does work is giving options, and what doesn't work is not being clear on the constraints.
exactly.
There is a question over there. I'll come to you. And people want to add to that? Or can I go to the question? Robert? The person over here with the black jacket. In the middle on the second row.
Hi, I have a question for you from the municipality. First of all, I have a question. You're talking about Amstel 3. Is that from beginning of the Amstel station up till the arena?
No,
or
it's the
from the
southern part.
arena up till the AMC?
Yeah,
I'm a bit
it's the green part
confused.
here on this
The
on
green
this
part.
map.
Because I know that from the Amstel station till the arena, that's a very green area. Is that still that green area? Will that be protected?
So I think you talk about the orange area over here on this map, which is called the New Kern and Work City over Amstel. At the moment, that's a bit it's not in the city of Amsterdam. It's the city of Outer Amstel, but we work very closely together to redevelop and redesign the area over there. And we're going to add a lot of houses in that area as well, but also going to reshape it to keep it as green as it is as now, but make it more available for all the people who are going to live over there.
So the
Sometimes it's very confusing that you that you have, you develop an area, then you need a park in the middle, and yet you have a park already, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know
Yeah.
what you mean, but we also have the task to build a lot of new houses in Amsterdam.
But this is a very local example, so I'm going to use it not to go into the discussion whether or not we should redevelop that area, but we're going to use it in how you can use it with citizen-driven urban development. So how do you connect with that? Do you have...
Well, not necessarily with a park, but I think with citizen-driven developments, it is the size, right? You should not make it too big, but it really can add different sort of functions and different character to a
Yeah.
development.
So what size would it be? So not like a whole borough, but like a small neighborhood of a few...
Yeah, well, there's many examples in Amsterdam too. Like in the Buiksloterham area, the Keuvel, for instance, is citizen-driven. The Schoonschip is citizen-driven. There's a lot of the bowling and Buikslotermeerplein is a citizen-driven development, and they are like on the scale of small buildings or like let's say 5 hectares max of things that you can do.
And I think also one of the essential aspects of it is that the same citizens that drove the development are also involved in the maintenance and management of that area. So it's in terms of
So
co-ownership and commitment, it's really their area.
So to combine both questions, both here in Mentimeter and the question from the audience, you really have to look at ownership of the area. You really have to connect with the area, and you have to be able to answer and to ask difficult questions and to really go into focus.
But you can also help these sort of initiatives, right?
There are questions in the audience. There are also questions in Mentimeter, so I want to ask them first, and then we speed up the questions. Questions for Ellen: what would be a possible sharing of loss in a situation where people cannot afford to stay in their neighborhood? So a sharing of loss where we talked about just then. So what would be a way to compensate people if they're not... that would be always bad, right? If you live in a neighborhood and you're forced to leave because richer people move in.
It could, but it also depends what alternative living space they have to offer. Where do they move to? So if that could be a good area where they move to with new, well-designed houses, with fully insulated, lower energy bills.
So what are examples of good ways of mitigating these kinds of negative impacts?
Well, again, talking with the citizens about, or with the particular residents involved, also trying to figure out, well, what would be an acceptable alternative for them, but also making it concrete and tangible. And there are examples in different cities where they have been offered alternative living space, where they also had the opportunity to move together to a new...
So keep the community, to use that word again, to keep the
to some
community
extent,
as a cohesion.
Yeah.
And then the third question, and then I go to the audience here. What should we teach urban professionals making all these community building practice happening among each other? So what we teach professionals of tomorrow is making sure that you're fair, making sure that your community is apart or together, not apart, and to really listen to people.
Yeah, I think the listening is really important, and trying to put yourselves in the position of those people, really see what they need, what their daily lives are about, what their daily worries and concerns are about.
And see them as the experts.
Yeah.
They know best. They know the area the best.
It sounds like an open door, but please, why? It's not, because that's why. Why is it so important to see them as the experts?
Well, because if you're a professional, you think you know better than just regular citizens.
So I'm an architect, so I know how to build a house. I'm a city builder, so I know how to build a city.
I know
So
what's
you don't
best
have
for
to-
you.
Yeah.
And especially in planning, which is very much top down, it's good to start at the bottom.
So for future professionals, don't think you know everything.
No.
We go to the people here in the audience. The first person over there with the brown jacket.
Yeah, hi. We're talking about inhabitant, community, citizen, and as a citizen, I wanted to ask, how is the process of selecting the inhabitant? How can I participate as a citizen to this kind of project? Yeah, and also, how do you avoid selecting the same kind of people, because I guess there is a privilege, as you mentioned, also being aware of those projects. Also, as an international, sometimes I assume that I don't have access to information. So, how does the process look like?
So to start, it's a brilliant question. Thank you for this. But it's all good questions. But so the first thing is, it is kind of easy when you redevelop or do a project in an existing neighborhood because you know who is connected. Nothing changes there, so you can invite the people living there. But how do you do that in a new neighborhood? So your example in Amstel 3, in the southern part of Amsterdam Zuidoost, the southern western part, people are not living there. You know who lives in the K-buurt. You don't know who's going to live in the new neighborhood. So how do you decide who can participate?
No, it's true. That's a very good question indeed, especially when you're an office area where the inhabitants are not there of yet. But we've been building upon a network, something like you showed in the Binkhorst, for years, to create a network that is connected with inhabitants in Southeast, on the other side of the railway track, for instance, entrepreneurs, people at schools, people who live there. So a very, very broad network. And that's why we started to make sure that if we want to get some representative discussion, get this network involved. At the moment, we know pretty well who lives where and who is involved in Amstel 3. And still then it's difficult to reach out for a broad amount of participants. So it's a bit looking forward for areas where you think, okay, they might be interested in having a say on how this public space, for instance, will be redeveloped.
So, and the simple fact is that when you look at the neighborhood, the redevelopment of a neighborhood, everybody who lives in a neighborhood and has documentation, that is of course a tricky part of that, because if you don't, you won't be invited or you can't prove that you're there, but that's a different discussion. So if you are documented and live in that area, you have to write, even if you're don't have a Dutch citizenship, you have a right to be informed. You have the right to participate in participation process. And there is a rule or a system, and I don't know it by heart, but there's a system from people, European Union citizen, that at some point you can vote at local elections. Look these up, but there are therefore ways so you can, at all levels, you can participate in local things going on. Is that an answer to your question? Good enough. Do you want to?
Well, I think social media play a big role here as well. So lots of these initiatives are also the bottom-up initiatives. They also work through social media. So once you get connected to depending on the country or the area, it's a Facebook group or an Insta group or whatever. But social media does play a big role.
But it's always difficult to find, I have to say.
We'll go to the next one, because there are many people who are it's always happening. One rule, Robert keeps holding onto the mic.
Okay.
Very important.
So my question is for Tjeerd, did I pronounce it right? Tjeerd. About the first project, I don't remember its name, but so about how you all make it happen. I mean, it's unbelievable that three firms was involved in planning the new neighborhood, but I mean, is there a funding for it? Because I assume the municipality funded one firm at the beginning to create something, or it was an insight from the municipality, but then three firms, it's going to be a bit expensive. So is it like funding from the neighborhood?
No. The municipality paid for the three firms. And the funny thing about the three firms is that each firm had a person from the firm living in another neighborhood. So that's sort of... Yeah. No, but it was we were paid by the municipality.
So it was part of the There's a question over there, and I saw one over there. So, and then I go back to menti.com.
Maybe just it's connected to the question of my neighbor, but it's how do you make sure that you're being inclusive when you're doing citizen participation? For example, I was a little bit shocked when you said, we organized a meeting, and if nobody shows up, well, then that's it. We just did our part. But I don't think that's really fair, because a lot of meetings are, for example, in the evenings. And we know that in the evenings, women who have children are less likely to participate. Or if you send invitation by email to registered resident, you might not reach out international people or etc. So how do you make sure, maybe as professional or as the municipality, that we're actually being inclusive when we do citizen-led development?
Who wants to respond on the table?
Well, I can respond from municipality perspective. We try to reach out to reach all the persons that need to have a say about a certain project. And for instance, illiteracy is also a big problem in the southeast. So we try to keep it as simple as possible. For instance, by going door by door if necessary, having meetings at different timetables, to be sure that you have a representative amount of people to have their say.
And then, of course, there is the thing. In COVID, we did citizen participation from this very desk in this very room on different projects in the city of Amsterdam. So together with the city of Amsterdam. And the only thing people had to do is open their laptop and participate. The threshold for that was, of course, the language. The language was Dutch then. So if you are a citizen or live here in this city, I think from the top of my head, there's over 180 different nationalities living in Amsterdam. So many, many, many languages being spoken. And this is especially the case in Amsterdam Zuidoost. Then it's quite hard, even if people are illiterate, it is quite hard to use right kind of language to really get to them. So it is a multi-threshold way of connecting with people. But how do you keep that in mind? What are the opportunities? So can you communicate with people in Swahili in Amsterdam Zuidoost? To give an example.
Well, me personally, not.
No, me personally, not as well. But it's a serious question.
That is a serious question indeed. But it's really hard to reach out to everyone.
Of course.
And one of the new items is the social media, because also people in Swahili or also Ghanesian or all kind of cultures are really easily accessible through social media. So that's really a big advantage.
So the city has all these networks, the connections.
Several networks.
Yeah.
In there, yeah.
So that's a way to do that. Thank you for the question.
Maybe also another way is just as a foundation, we are there for like 12 years now. So you don't have to participate in the first year. You can also do that in from year 5 on or whatever. So we're slow and we are just there.
So
and open. So there's always an open invitation, but it's no obligation. And
so
that's the way of doing it.
Open door.
Yeah, but you need to be visible. You need to be, it's you cannot reach everyone, but just shout out that you're there. Right?
We kind of have to speed up, but there's a question over there. The person with the white shirt.
Hi there. I have a question around based on the policy cycle and the measuring and the monitoring after the stakeholder engagement, after the project has been finished and completed. Is there tools or techniques that you use to help future developments and future stakeholder engagement work and be successful in the learnings associated with that, to share the knowledge?
Perhaps if I can respond, that there is, I think what is important is to recognize that a project is never finished. It's a sort of ongoing, and I think it's really important also during the plan making, always have the open door, because new people come in, people leave, so there will always be this dynamics. That's also sort of inherent to the city, and I think it's really important to recognize that and to account for such dynamics as well. Also, in the organization of such processes, also in terms of the ownership or the co-ownership, that also there people should be able to participate and that you keep on being there and inviting people to keep entering this process if they want to.
Yeah, and what I would like to add to it is that what we are always trying to do is also create an online version of whatever we're working on of the project, so that people that were not able to participate can at least see what happened, and also comment on that same website.
So always have a way of sharing information in different kinds of routes. Is there one final question from the audience here. Last chance, no. Then we'll move to the last, and that I find this interesting. I have two questions from Mentimeter. The one is, how do we learn from all these good examples? So we take along with different projects in different cities all over Europe, because that is, of course, the goal of these European projects like EUREKA is. And the other one was, what are the qualities of a good urban innovator? And especially the last one, in connection with those, I find quite interesting. So I want to end tonight with all of you, and I'll go from one person to the other, to the other, to the other, to ask you in the final words to give advice to the people listening and viewing tonight. Can I start with you, Tjeerd? Or do you need more time to think about this?
So obviously I need a little bit more time, but from the top of my head, I would say what you should never do with a participatory project is come up with a plan and share it at the beginning, because then everyone does not feel, taken seriously.
So no finished plans?
No plans. Just let them just say...
Oh, none at all?
Maybe none at all, yeah.
Okay.
Or you have to think about it, but and work in scenarios. We could do this, or this, or this, or this. So keep it open.
And what then for a good urban innovator for the future? So all these students watching, what are the qualities they really do have to internalize?
Maybe ask my name.
We'll go, just do the first round first. So Geert-Jas, what is your, what are your examples? What are the good things you can learn from these kind of examples? And then the question, of course, what are the qualities of future urban innovators?
Yeah, I think they add up to more or less the same answer, and that is you should allow people to actually do something. So it's not about the designer designing your wishes, but if you want to have a garden, let's go make a garden. And that's really the way to participate. And if you want to have like a safe way of crossing the street and also being a little bit inclusive, then have your rainbow zebra walk there.
So and focus on possibilities and not on obstacles.
Yeah, and actually do something. So allow people to do something, take a picture of it and say, hey, I did this. And it will be there tomorrow and maybe not the day after. Because a lot of things are temporary, but actually make them own something. And that's not about the ownership of real estate or whatever, but about the ownership of having done something in the public space, for instance.
Thank you. Jonel, what is your perspective on this?
Yeah, I agree upon that. Make sure that there's a gain for people to participate and make it take it seriously. And make sure that in the end they get some kind of reward, either by a park, either by a nice zebra path or whatever. But take it seriously. That's the
zebra crossing. Yeah. So, and you said that is the thing from your earlier discussion or the early things you brought forward is also be clear on the guidelines in which the final end product has to. So, if you want to build housing, then you have to say, well, we have to build housing and we're going to design it together. That's the thing you said in the beginning.
Start with that. Don't start with a plan, but start with what's fixed.
Thank you. Ellen?
Keep communicating. I think that is really important, and don't be afraid to change your mind, and dare to change your mind as well, and be open about it and honest about it. And that counts for all parties involved.
So be open to be convinced by good arguments, basically. Yeah. And is that something that is difficult for people right now? Is that?
Yeah, I think people, and it is a bit the stakeholder approach, where people are invited to voice their interests. So they sort of, what is my interest? And I need to bring it in. And then you quite soon end into this fight, and people take a position, and it's really difficult to let go of that position along the way. And then also it becomes personal, and people get involved longer and longer. So, yeah, keep an open mind.
Keep an open mind. And Tjeerd, you needed more time to think about the ideal urban planner of tomorrow. So,
open-minded. Yeah. Very eager to talk to people and take them seriously is a bit of the thing going. But also please try to be experimental and have a bit of courage, you know. So think further than the zebra, with all respect. You know, think about new ownership models of citizens. Think about new processes, new methods. I think you need to be very innovative to get to the next step.
Yeah, there is a professor from the Amsterdam University, of the University of Amsterdam here, Marco de Brommerstoet, who had a few years ago quite brilliant book on he's talking about the possible futures of tomorrow. So plural. So there are different ways of designing. So you don't have to keep in your own lane as we are right now. We are the ones who design the world of tomorrow. So we can, as long as we keep the end goal in mind and we keep it safe and fair and livable, we can design whatever you want. That's basically what you want to say then. Brilliant. Thank you.
Exactly it.
Thank you for all your questions and thank you for joining us at this evening. And we talked about community building and multi-stakeholder urban development, as I earlier said. Quite a mouthful. This is a part of the EUREKA project, of course, a European Union project funded partially by the Erasmus Plus project from the European Union and in collaboration with partners from 4 different European countries and all the people over there. Of course, we're going to make much more programming here in Pakhuis. Our Robert, Faiza and Natasha were able to make tonight, so thanks for them. And thank you, of course, for the speakers tonight. Tjeerd Hakau, co-founder of Space, and Mette Ellen van Buren, professor urban development management at the Technical University of Delft. Gert-Joos Peek, lecturer area development and transition management at the Rotterdam University of Applied Science and owner of Spot On. And of course, you talked a lot about Bonkhorst, and we're going to check the Anyway, Binkhorst, sorry, it's my head. And Janel Nuchtere, project manager at Amstel 3 here in the city of Amsterdam for Amsterdam Zuidoost. Thank you so much for being here. Sorry for mumbling my English for tonight, and hope to see you very soon. Thank you. Bye.